So I've been reading a lot of Ken Wilber, and this is my attempt at distilling it into something that is more accessible to a wider audience, especially to people who don't read books, who don't do these things, but they are suffering and they're going through some hard shit, but they want to figure out a way that actually works for them. And I mean, it already is kind of accessible, so I'm not like trying to frame myself as smart here. Okay, so first of all, we need to kind of paint the big picture here because that is what's missing in the school system. Nobody fucking teaches you how to think about the big picture. You learn about math, you learn about English, you learn about science, all of which are actually very important. And I agree that we probably all should learn math, science, and all these things in school. But nobody fucking tells you how to look at the big picture. And that's why you have so many kids who say, what's the fucking point in using this? How is this going to help me in my daily life? Oh, practical, practical, practical. And that is the fault of the school system. It is your duty. It is part of the gig to teach us like where this fits within like the picture, like the big picture that is our lives and human society and our place here in the universe. But we're not going to this isn't a video about the school system. This is about your depression, your anxiety, and all these negative clouds and shadows that you are facing. Because I also struggled with depression a lot as a kid, or for probably much of my life. And I could probably say in the past like 18 months or so, it was the first time in my entire life where I could say, yeah, I haven't really been all that depressed, maybe anxious sometimes, but I've probably been more productive than I ever have been. So let's kind of start in the beginning here. So humans kind of come with like two things. We have kind of like our evolution, right? Our biology, right? Our base layer, which hasn't really changed all that much in I think 100,000 years, right? So the same humans that were in the savannas are not pretty much the same biologically now, right? Like if we look back in the savannah, like they would look pretty much like us, maybe a little bit skinnier, but there's another aspect to that too. So we've kind of been like our bioevolution is kind of capped, right? But we have minds that are so complex that they literally take up like 30% of our daily caloric expenditure, that they're very complex, that there is actually another thing going on too, another kind of evolution that's happening, and that is the evolution of human consciousness, and that is the realm of memetics, right? As Richard Dawkins coined in the 70s. So basically, the idea is like the tides that rise and fall, human consciousness does the same. It waxes and wanes. So if you look at the past 2,000 years, I want to talk about Ken Wilber here now. Basically, what we've seen is the pervasiveness of religious thought, or the abundance of religious thought. And then now we've seen recently go kind of flip the other direction, where we have this scientific thought. Now, somewhere in the middle. So basically, Ken Wilber says that we have these kind of three eyes of the human consciousness, or the three eyes of human consciousness and perception, right? So the first eye is the eye of flesh. That is the senses. The phenomenological is the fancy philosophical term for it. But really all that means is it's the five senses, right? Your sight, your sound, your feel, your hearing, your taste, all that sort of stuff. And then there's the eye of reason, which is rationality, logic, which is like thinking, right? The mental. The eye, you can think of it like that, the mental. And then there's the eye of contemplation. That is spirituality. That is truth with the capital T, and spirit with a capital S. Or you can even say God, the universe, and all these sorts of things, right? So before all of that, so in the past 2,000 years, with that context in mind, basically what our thought was kind of dominated by, and all these three things are kind of like influenced by each other. But the third one, but in the past 2,000 years, what happened was we had like this predominance. Actually, for probably most, I think most of our lives, most of human existence was basically dominated by this almost like contemplative eye, and you applied it to everything, right? That's why there's so many myths that we created the gods. There's the Greek gods, the Roman gods, and even before that, even like my Filipino heritage, like we were pagan. Like we thought there was a god for everything. There was a god of hunger, a god of all these sorts of things. Now Philippines is predominantly Catholic, and then somewhere along the way, the Greeks and the Romans came up with rationality and the power of reason and all these sorts of things, right? And thus philosophy. Philosophy was kind of like the pinnacle of the eye of reason, and then religion was kind of like the thing of the eye of contemplation. And then in the 17th century, with people like Galileo and Kepler, we kind of ushered in the pinnacle of the eye of flesh, which is empirical science, right? Empirical science. And this brought in such a great revolution, like a fundamental reorganization of how the eye of all the eyes work together, that it kind of flipped the other way. So we've experienced immense material success, and it has obviously brought on very many good things for society. But now it is a predominant force. It's kind of flipped the other direction, where the eye of science, the eye of this thing that's not even really kind of reason. It's just, if it's empirical, it's true, right? If it's this kind of positivism, as it's called, which basically means that the only knowledge that's true is that is rooted in like empirical science. If that's wrong, somebody tell me, please. I'm just trying to curate knowledge here. And while this is this is great, this has brought us immense material wealth, and this is generally not the best for happiness. Why? Because it is quantitative in nature, and basically it's like basically all that concerns it's concerned with is numbers and like pure hard fact, right? And the problem is, like, human experience is not that. It's subjective, right? There's a lot of subjective. Like, you have tastes in food, you have opinions about things, you have things you hate, things you like. Those you can measure. You can probably tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how good something is, but you can't really describe to me what the experience is. I can't feel the experience that you have, the exact subjective experience that you have of liking food. So like, why? So now that we have that picture painted, like, so why are we miserable? Why do we feel so much like pain? Why is there so much depression? Why is there so much anxiety? It's because, again, we have taken this eye of flesh, and we have now made that the predominant view with which we interact and view reality, right? Because really, that is like what kind of like consciousness is, right? It is like kind of that intersection between us and how we perceive reality. So what Ken Wilber suggests is that we need to kind of not get rid of the eye of flesh, but now that we've kind of gone down the level to the eye of the flesh, now we need to get all the other two back in working order together, right? So here's what's happening is, like, a lot of us because basically if you take the eye of flesh and you take that all the way, what happens is you get this thing called relativism. And basically what that means is that people don't believe in absolute truth, like capital T truth. And you can tell a lot about a society by its relationship with truth, right? And you can see that today. A lot of people are kind of just arguing about their own opinions, right? About their own kind of, it's us versus them. And that's what happens is, because there's no relative truth, or there is no absolute truth, and there's only your truth. You think that because your truth is the only thing that's valid, it doesn't fucking matter what their truth is, because yours is valid. You see the problem in that? This leads to just a lot of like isolated tribes more so than like an interconnected greater sum of everybody. And so what does this mean? This is why like we're so fucking miserable. Is we can't, or this is part of why we're so fucking miserable, because we're all kind of, we have this kind of antagonism with each other because of like our notions of like truth. And again, a lot of people, they're not like, this isn't necessarily like a conscious awareness type of thing. This is like, this is something that kind of permeates the subconscious through society and the way you're raised, and through like the way everybody else is raised, and through the macro things that are going on in the world down to what's going on like to like the way people think, right? So this isn't exactly something that people can just like consciously realize, right? We kind of have to study it and see what the fuck's going on. So people have no concept of like where, of like spirituality, of reason, of all these sorts of things that are supposed to be balanced and kind of used in tandem with the senses, with the eye of the flesh. We just see what's going on, and then there's not a lot of critical thinking that happens, right? And again, this isn't necessarily people's fault. This is not. This is like kind of, it's kind of everybody's fault, really, and it's up to us to take responsibility for it. So again, now let's get to really why we're miserable. I mean, if you've ever played sports, or if you've ever played a team sport, or if you've ever been part of like an organization that does some really hard shit, you've probably gotten a glimpse of it, and that is really the feeling of being part of something greater than yourself. And that feels really good. It feels really good. It gives meaning to your life. And that is one of the things that has been kind of tossed aside, right? Because I'm telling you, the kind of camaraderie that you can have with people that are kind of building towards the same really cool thing that is a net positive for humanity, it feels really, really fucking good. It feels invigorating. It feels fulfilling. But that is largely missing from society nowadays, because there, in general, on the surface, right? Because there's just the collaborative type you can get from that, but then there's also the deeper part of that, where you don't, maybe you don't necessarily feel one with humans, but you can feel one with the universe, and like the truth of reality, as it's called. I might be confusing the two. And you can call this God, you can call this whatever, but this is really what the heart of all religion gets at. It is at that kind of essence of the universe, and that you are a part of it too. And in Hinduism, there is kind of like this concept of the Brahman and the Atman. And if I butcher that, I'm sorry. So basically, the Brahman is like the totality of like existence of the universe, right? And then there is the Atman within us, which is actually just Brahman. It's just kind of like the reflection of Brahman in ourselves, right? So really, we are universe. We are the universe, and the universe, not in the kind of like we are whole type of thing, but we are all, right? And so like first, like that kind of like oneness with reality, that is something that is just deeply missing from the human psyche nowadays. So now we're kind of just left with, okay, we're stuck here in this physical world now. And the thing about it is that the physical world and science, it doesn't leave room for things like meaning and subjective experience. So, and but we're trying to live an ideal lifestyle based on those things. And so what happens is, you look at all these celebrities and all these like figures, and then we look up to these guys and their materialistic lifestyle, not the philosophical materialism, but like the modern day version of modern day of the vernacular expression of materialism, right? Lamborghinis and mansions and all these sorts of things, because that is a kind of status that we ascribe to in the material world. Because, well, in most realms of human consciousness, now that's the only barometer of happiness that we have, and that is the problem. This is empty. It's empty. It's beautiful, and like it's a part of our existence, a necessary part of our existence that we should master, that we should probably aim for wealth so that we can get freedom. But then we need to worry about the other two eyes, right? The eye of reason and the eye of contemplation. I mean, people don't read books anymore. We have like short form content that just saps your mind. People kind of mindlessly scroll. We're not learning anymore, right? And I'm not saying you have to go literally read a bunch of books, but I mean, like, dude, look and follow your interests. Like, if you want to learn how to play the guitar, learn how to play the guitar, but don't go mindlessly scrolling. Don't go mindlessly playing video games all day long. That's the problem, right? Is we just kind of go about our day, and we live through the eye of flesh and we ignore all these other two things. So, and this is like a societal issue now. Like, we can see it even in societies that were historically collectivist, like Japan and China. There, people are getting more and more isolated, more and more depressed. I mean, Japan or China has the 6-6. I forgot what that was, 8-6-6 or something like that, where it's like 6 hours, or is it 8-6-1, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, one day of rest, something like that. And then in Japan, you have the hikikomori, which people are self isolating. And then you see that here in the West too, right? Like, you see a lot of like incel men, and they're more single than ever, more like we're having more virgins than ever, which people are just lonely, right? And so we turn to things like porn, drugs, and all these sorts of things to numb everything. When really, like, we need to look within and go deeper within ourselves. And this is not easy. This is not easy. Like, but this is. I hope this kind of paints the picture of what's going on here. Right? Is like we have seen this overemphasis on the material world being like our only plane of reality, when really, like, when human existence is more than just what lies in the material, right? It lies beyond what we can just see, feel, or hear, right? It lies in here, and it lies in here, right? It lies in our existence here in the grand place of the universe, and it relies in things like meaning, right? So when you have no concept of spirituality, when you have no concept of you know where this is all going, so when you suffer, when you go through hard shit, you have no way of framing that hardship, you have no way of framing that suffering, so all you just feel is, man, this sucks and I hate this fucking sucks and I hate this. So it just sucks. And this is why people go nihilistic, why people go cynical, is because they don't have any way of framing their their suffering within like a greater life, right? Because in the past, or people who are so Catholic, right? Like, God has a plan. God has a God has something better for me, right? Could it be cope? I don't know. But going nihilistic, going cynical is not the answer either. So I hope this kind of brings a little bit of light. I am going to get better at articulating this over time. But yeah, thanks for tuning in this time.